This is a photograph of what might be an implant inside of an abduction experiencer's hand. Tissue samples, scoop marks. Here you can see the scoop mark. And then we have pattern puncture wounds reported over and over again down here in a triangle shape, and it looks like that advanced it forward. There is also a mind scan, and this is a quote from another anonymous abduction experiencer. He put his eyes close to mine, and I felt intense love coming from him. I have never experienced such a powerful feeling directed at me before. He told me that I am part of them, that I am family. I have no reason to be fearful or to distrust them. They mean no harm. And yet, another abduction experiencer wrote, there have been a few times where I felt a short period of pleasure. This is a feeling that comes from them. They want me to feel this way for their own benefit. They communicate to me that I'm performing an important function for them. It is helping me to understand more about them, to understand more about us. And they need to take my genetic material. They do not intend to harm me. Nearly every female abduction experiencer has reported that they underwent a reproductive procedure where a needle is inserted into their navel for the purpose of withdrawing ova. Men report that a cup-like device is placed over their groin and that sperm is removed. This is a photograph of an abduction experiencer's navel. She took the photograph immediately after she was returned home. Her navel was bleeding. These are her calves. You can see pressure marks. On this one, the three, see if I can do this without advancing the slide. You can see the 3 finger marks and also a scratch at the bottom below that. This is the other calf. Many abduction experiences report fluorescence on their skin, and many investigators have found this as well. Well, fluorescence can be caused by chemicals. It can be caused by detergents. But some abduction experiencers end up with a fluorescent green pattern on their skin. I'm working with one experiencer right now who recently reported to me that there were 2 rectangles, perfect rectangles, on her hand, and underneath that was a curved-edged triangle. A biopsy was taken of that, and the tissue was studied. It penetrated 8 layers of derma. So what do we find going on the craft? Sexual and non-sexual DNA extraction. Those punch biopsies that leave scoop marks may be DNA extraction that is non-sexual. There are hybrid baby presentations. Sexual contact with humans, reptilians, hybrids, while being observed on board the craft. Removal of body fluids, including blood and glandular material. Now, some men are beginning to report to me that they recall a needle being inserted probably into their thymus. The thymus controls the immune system. Without an adequate thymus function, you will develop lupus and other immune disorders. Very interesting. I'm looking more into this. I don't have enough information to draw any conclusion on that. People report immersion in viscous fluid that they find they can breathe. Again, we're not sure what this is for, but it's reported over and over again among abduction experiencers. I used to think that it might be used to protect the human body during transport into space. I'm beginning to change my mind on that and beginning to wonder if it might be for medicinal purposes or in order to sanitize a human being before they leave the craft. I really don't know. I only know that a large number of abduction experiences report that they are being put into this viscous fluid in rectangular tanks. They can breathe it. Those who are conscious before this occurs are extremely frightened about this. They think that they're going to die, that they're going to drown, and are very surprised to find that they're able to breathe it. When they're taken out of the tanks, it dries very, very rapidly. They also see images of cataclysmic events on screens or on holographic images or images that are just somehow projected into their brains. One of the questions that we asked is, do you have a formal diagnosis of chronic fatigue and immune dysfunction syndrome or reactivating mononucleosis? There have been studies in the past that showed that abduction experiences have a higher percentage of these diseases than in the general population. And what is chronic fatigue and immune dysfunction syndrome? It is not just being tired. It's debilitating fatigue that is not improved with bed rest, and it may be exacerbated by physical or mental activity. It is not just being tired. It is not depression. You usually have a low-grade fever and flu-like symptoms. There are tender lymph nodes, sore throat, and headache. It sort of acts like a retrovirus, but no virus has been discovered yet. There are also problems with concentration and memory. Some people even lose the ability to walk. Some people have to go on Social Security disability. 41% of the abduction experiencers who completed our questionnaires have a formal diagnosis, whereas it is less than 1% in the general population. It costs the U.S. $9.1 billion a year. Getting back to the extraction of reproductive material, here is another quote. Chambers are used to create a human form from genetic material. Anonymous. And what you're looking at is a sketch by an abduction experiencer who was taken in 1978. She was taken into a room where she observed fetuses in various stages of development. Some of them had a human appearance, others had an appearance much more like the Greys that took her. She was taken into an adjacent room and placed on a table. Many, many people report that these fetuses or these embryos are implanted in their bodies in an artificial sac, and that about 3 months or so later they're taken back on board the craft and the sac is removed. And the fetus grows to its full development inside one of these chambers. After they're removed from the chambers, the ETs want them to have skin-to-skin contact with the humans. They want the humans to nurture these babies. And we know that if human babies are not nurtured, they will develop problems. They will develop disorders where they will never be able to function in society normally. 23% of the respondents said that they had contact with hybrids or have observed hybrids on the craft. And often this nurturing kind of experience takes place. There are generally 3 stages or more of hybrids. There are the ones that look more like the Greys, and they live out their lifetimes on the craft. They're telepathic. There are the mid-stage that is sort of halfway between being Grey and being human. And then there are the ones who appear to be of human form. Perhaps they have been genetically altered by the Greys, but they appear more human. And many abduction experiences have reported that they believe they have been made pregnant, or these embryos have been implanted into their wombs, that they have carried them to full term and have babies here on Earth that they suspect a hybrid. We have no evidence that they are genetically different than humans. I do have some information that the Greys are probably not genetically compatible with humans. So there must be some kind of splicing that's taking place if all of this is actually occurring, and certainly abduction experiencers, and a large percentage of them, are reporting this. The late-stage hybrids, as I said, do speak using voices and can survive on Earth, according to reports. Another quote, "Existence in space has caused them to lose their ability to reproduce. They have to use human DNA in order to propagate their species." So that is what one anonymous abduction experiencer told me. Another said, "In the past they took many samples, but this process has now stopped. It was based around a reintegration of certain DNA nucleotides so that some ETs could experience different stages or different ranges of emotions, ones that their race no longer understood. What better way to understand a race than to become like them?" 2 different takes. Some abduction experiences have reported that they were given tours of the craft. And this is a sketch by one. And she told me that she was taken into a room in the central core of the craft, and it appeared to be comprised of biological material. And that there were almost like lotus flowers that would close up around this biological material in the central core. It is interesting that so many abduction experiencers wrote about this independently. One wrote, "The mothership and scout ships were both mechanical and biological. The physicality of the equipment was there, but you also had to use your mental abilities to move things. The craft is operated mainly biologically. Its interior section is alive. It can think. These are different abduction experiencers. The craft seems to have its own intelligence. It can sense its surroundings. Biological material is used deep within the energy system of the craft. These craft are living entities, much like bacteria. They live, breathe, function, and create. They are grown from what was initially a hybrid framework. The craft are generic, genetically modified structures. Not all craft have individual operators, but there are certain parts of their DNA replicated." And then last, 32% stated that they observed human types on board the craft. They reported Nordic types, and they were told or shown scenes of cataclysmic Earth destruction stemming from a magnetic pole shift. Or experiencers have feelings or visions of impending disaster, earthquakes, or widespread flooding.